Hello, I'm Amanda Rafuse, and this is Spark, the Upper Valley's new arts and culture program here on CATV. We're hoping to spark your interest in the arts by hosting one-on-one conversations that explore the depth and variety of culture here in the Upper Valley, to the amazing people who create and those who administrate, the artists who educate and the generous patrons who donate, the audiences, students, and consumers who enjoy and participate. Welcome to Spark. Hello and welcome to Spark. Today I have with me a very good friend and a wonderful human being, Lisa Christie. She's the former executive director of Everybody Wins Vermont, a literacy-based mentoring program she founded in 2000. It's now in 25 schools and one in New Hampshire, 25 in Vermont, one in New Hampshire, and adult mentors read for 1 hour over lunch each week with a student at their local elementary school. Lisa currently works part-time as a nonprofit consultant. She tries to be an excellent graduate student, which I think she's actually done with. So
I'm done.
Done with that. She's also a burgeoning playwright, which is how she and I have worked together. And with her friend Lisa Cadow, runs and created Book Jam, which is a blog and an event organization devoted to promoting reading, independent bookstores, and public libraries. Readers can find reviews, recommendations, discussions, author interviews. And what I love about this website and this blog and event is that they're dedicated to creating community through literature, which is one of my heartbeats, and literature-focused live events such as author conversations and much, much more. The blog, for example, they run a program called Pages in the Pub, which brings disparate communities together around literature and, I hope, beer, and Book Buzz, a literacy program for K through 12 age students. Book Jam works to help people get out of book block, which is what Lisa refers to, that moment when you wonder, what should I read now? They offer the right book in the right hands at the right time. Lisa believes that literature and a love of reading are essential aspects of healthy communities as they build empathy, provoke thought, and open the door to discussions around myriad issues. She lives in Vermont with her husband, 2 sons, and a very large Bernese mountain dog. You can learn more about Lisa and Book Jam at bookjamvermont.com, and you can read about Everybody Wins at everybodywinsvermont.org. Lisa, welcome to Spark.
Wow, what an introduction. That was so fun. I'm so flattered. And I was thinking about the large Bernese mountain dog who has buried herself under the porch because as of yesterday, it's too hot for her until like November.
Yeah.
So we'll see her again there.
I feel that. I have a husky. It's the same. She's looking at me right now like, what are you doing to me?
Right.
Exactly.
Why are we here? Yeah. What happened to that white stuff that I like so much better?
Exactly. So, Lisa, I am, as I've mentioned before on the show, I'm an inveterate reader. I have books everywhere in my house. I listen to audiobooks. If I walk out the door, I constantly have stories. So I wonder what you would say. There are people who are the opposite, right? That say, I'm just not a reader. Or, you know, maybe they had a terrible teacher in high school, or maybe they feel like they're too busy, or they just think reading isn't for them, or it can't hold their interest. Why do you think the act of reading a book, or what do you think the act of reading a book, not an article or an online piece, what does it bring into our lives?
Yeah. That's a really big question. So I'm going to back it out just a little bit. One of the things that I emphasized when I started Everybody Wins, and which they still emphasize, I'm lucky enough to be a mentor at the White River School still, is reading anything is great. Like I remember reading a lot of cereal boxes when I was a kid. You know, You're sitting there eating breakfast and you read the ingredients and you read whatever the puzzle is or whatever. And that's great. I love a glossy magazine. I am a sucker for O, which no longer exists. And online is sort of inevitable. So I have no problem with any of those things. I think that's all great. Now, that said, there is nothing like a good book, which gets you back to the original question. And for me, a good book does a lot of things. It increases your attention span, which is really good for me right now. I feel really scattered, especially as we're coming out of the pandemic, and just sitting with a novel and sitting down, it just sort of forces you to be somewhere for a while, that doesn't allow you to think about what's for dinner or I have to answer this text. It also lets you get lost in someone else's thoughts and words, which is really helpful for stress release. It's really helpful for thinking creatively. It's just an escape. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, reading for pure escapism is one of my favorite forms of reading. But then that also teaches you something. And I think that there are so many things that we cannot know from our own lived experience. And a book allows us some insight into other people's lived experiences. And for me, that's another reason to do it. And then as a bonus, the scientist in me, or the social scientist in me, it has been proven that reading novels in particular increases empathy. And increased empathy, to me, leads to greater kindness. And I sort of feel that the world can use more of that. And those would be all the reasons I would tell someone to pick up a book. Escape, entertainment, you're going to learn something. It's going to help you be less stressed. And, you know, in the long run, if we all become a little bit kinder because we're reading a bunch of novels, so much the better.
So much the better. Yes. Yes. I love that. That's so great. So on that, you and your partner also, Lisa, different Lisa, say that your online, that book jam highlights books you didn't even know you needed.
Exactly. Because there's so many times you don't know you needed this perfect book. Like, I'll tell you in a little bit, there's a chance about the book that I just finished. I had no idea I needed that book. And it was the perfect thing for me to read over the past 2 days. It was great. Yeah. And, you know, the book jam, I don't know if you want me to talk a little bit about how it started, but
that'd be great. Yeah.
It started as a dare. It literally was a dare. Penny McConnell and Liza Bernard, who are the co-owners of the Norwich bookstore, I don't know. I think they're retiring and phasing out. So I think they're still there.
Don't be scared, right? Because they have new owners.
Yeah, so they have new owners. They're great. But they, about 10 years ago, came up to Lisa and I. We were both working for them part-time, physically in their store at the time, and said, we want the two of you guys to start a radio show about books. And we were sort of like, why us? And they're like, because of all the people who work here, you're the only two that would talk enough to fill the airspace. So we decided to be flattered by that. And rather than, you know, think about the amount of airspace we have. And so we started to research a radio show about books. And we found that was cost prohibitive. It wasn't going to work. So we started in the basement of the Norwich Public Library. I bought a cheap recorder and we started podcasting. Now this was 10 years ago. I don't think they were even called podcasts back then.
Right. Yeah.
We literally started talking about books with a recorder in between us in the basement of the Norwich Public Library. And then we would upload them to our Book Jam website. And we would write a little review for each of the books we talked about and sort of talk about the theme and then link all those books to the Norwich bookstore website so people could buy them easily.
Yeah.
What we found was people were not listening to the podcast, but they were reading the words. I think just for whatever reason, it was quicker for them to just click on the link and see what we were talking about. So we quit podcasting after about a year and a half and went strictly to a written blog. And that's sort of where we've been ever since. And the whole purpose of it is to help. We were trying to help our local independent bookstore just gain a bigger audience and ideally increase sales. But we were also just really trying to help people find their next great book. Right. And because we also at the time were both on the board of our local public library, we started to think about what can we do that will help libraries and bookstores and people who need books. And so we started the live events and started Pages in the Pub. In the basement, we have presenters. They talk about books. They do really rapid 90-second reviews. People are drinking, they're talking, they hear the presenters. There's an order form. The Norwich Bookstore always donates 20% of the sales to our local public library. So people are overly generous or in their buying practices during the event.
Right.
And we sell a lot of books and we raise a lot of money for libraries. And so we've been doing that for years. And a teacher at the Marion Cross School who had attended that event for a couple of years in a row approached me about adapting it for children at the Marion Cross School. We obviously, the first thing we did was we took it out of a pub.
Juice boxes instead of beers.
And so we've been doing book buzzes at schools with usually donated food from the PTO beforehand, where the kids are the presenters and they do a 90-second presentation about a book that they're really excited about. And again, the local independent bookstore will donate a portion of the sales, usually to that school's library. I just did a program with Norman Williams Public Library around books for book clubs. So anything that we can do that helps people find their next great book, we are willing to do it.
Oh my God, you are my heroes. And I actually would love to, because I would just sit and talk to you about books all day too. So have you thought about going back to now that podcasts are a thing? Have you thought about going back to the podcast idea?
We haven't specifically yet, although we loved doing it. My partner, Lisa, is currently getting her master's in social work from the University of Vermont. Wow. So her time is extremely limited until I'm looking at my watch because I think I have it written down on my calendar, somewhere around July. She graduates and it's all good. So when she is done, we're going to sort of talk about what to do next.
Yeah. Especially
the podcasting was really fun. And I personally love the fact that we were in the basement of the public library.
Yeah.
There's just something about that as the origin for this feels really good.
So you mentioned the independent Norwich bookstore, and of course, obviously, each of our little towns here in the Upper Valley have their own public libraries. You know, I live next door to the Quechee Public Library, and it's like the cutest library on the face of the earth.
We know the librarian there; she's great.
She's great. They're awesome. So what excites you? I also will say one of the things I love about here is pretty much every town in the Upper Valley has its own independent bookstore, which is really incredible, and that there are no chains around here. There's no Barnes and Noble. I mean, obviously we all have Amazon to deal with, but that we've got the Yankee bookstore and we've got Norwich and we've got Still North now. And so I guess I'm curious about, with all of those things, what excites you most about the literary scene here in the Upper Valley?
I think I'm excited because, I mean, there's so much to love about here. There are so many readers. There are so many people who don't think that they are readers, and then you give them a book and they're sort of like, wow, I may be a reader. And that is really fun. The independent booksellers, that's what I'm really excited about. I think that Penny and Liza have created just an amazing bookstore in Norwich, and they're ready to pass it off to the two new owners. And I'm super excited to see what these two new owners do, mostly because I've been excited to see what Carrie and Christian are doing at the Yankee Bookshop. Yeah. And I've been thrilled to work with Carrie on a couple of events. And so that's been fun. And Allie at Still North Books and Bar, I can't wait to see what she does now that the bar part of it can actually happen.
It's going on.
Like we're coming out of the pandemic. And so that aspect of her business, I think, I just can't wait to see what sort of creative things happen there. Yeah. And then the other thing is, as you know, there are so many amazing authors who live in Vermont and New Hampshire. I mean, so anytime you go to one of these independent bookstores, they're having like this nationally renowned author there for an event in a way that you wouldn't think. You know, Norwich is a town of 3,000 people. You would not think that I would have a chance to meet Julia Alvarez. Right. And yet I have been able to do that. And so those are the things that are just really exciting. And the fact that people people really care enough to support great libraries. I mean, the libraries are amazing, and the great bookstores. So it's all good.
It is all good. It is. You're right. I mean, I can't walk by a bookstore without buying something. Carrie and Christian love me because every time I walk in, they're like, "All right, what are you going to get?" I'm like, "I know."
They probably have their Amanda stack. Like, oh, here she is.
Yeah. They definitely see me coming. I'll put it that way. So I am going to steal from your blog because I love your 3 questions interview that you have on the Book Jam blog for authors that are coming to local bookstores or just authors that you're interested in or featuring in. So now I'm going to put you in the hot seat, and these are going to be rapid fire. Are you ready for it?
Okay.
What book would you say, hands down, has impacted you the most in your life or helped you become the human that you are today?
Okay. That cannot be narrowed to one book. And I think you knew that I was going to say that. I think you absolutely do. So I will be fast because I know this is supposed to be quick. I think the books I read as a kid probably had the most impact. And that is not to say the books that I've read as an adult haven't had an impact, but they're the ones that started me on the life as a reader, and they also shaped me. The Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil Frankweller, 4th grade, my absolute favorite. It gave me a love of adventure. It gave me permission to sort of not follow the rules all the time, which I didn't learn how to do until I became an adult. It took a long time for that lesson to ferment itself. But it also taught teamwork and collaboration because they were not going to survive. Jamie and Claudia were not going to survive unless they worked together.
Right. So, despite the fact that they really didn't want to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the Chronicles of Narnia helped me create a world that I could live in my imagination whenever I needed to. And there was a series that no one seems to know of, but I remember reading when I was about 4th or 5th grade, the Trixie Belden series, and it was a mystery series. Oh. 47 books, and they took place in upstate New York, which as a Southerner was as foreign to me as India was. Right. And it taught me that you didn't have to be perfect like Nancy Drew. Yeah. I did not identify with Nancy Drew at all. And so the fact that the heroine of these books was this kind of crazy curly-haired blonde girl, which you can probably see why I identified, was there. Yeah. And then as an adult, East of Eden, my dad challenged me to read that when I was a preteen. And I remember being shocked at how mean people could be. So it stuck with me to this day, just how well he crafted that book about this family and what they did to each other. Jane Austen, I'm a fan. I remember reading Love in the Time of Cholera and just having magic realism and having never thought about that before. The Bluest Eye, Toni Morrison, amazing book about how to really see something from someone else's perspective and see how the world gives people messages that aren't very healthy. And that is a euphemism. So for what happens in that book, I remember reading Hope and the Unseen, which is a nonfiction book by Ron Susskind about the state of public education in the United States. And he was a Wall Street Journal reporter who followed this kid around from the DC from a DC public school and followed him to Brown and just sort of what that was. And then there's books that I read when I was in a place that maybe the book was.
You've gone way beyond.
Okay. Yeah. So that's it. So they're all there.
And I love, and you're right. Of course, you're right that it's so many multiple stories that help us to be who we are. Right. But kind of on that, just to narrow it down a little bit, is there one book I go back to, and I call it comfort reading. I go back and read certain books. I will reread the Anne of Green Gables books or Madeline Langell. I will read her books. Those are the books I read when I was little, and I will go back and reread those. Is there one book or one or two books that you really go back to?
For years, I annually read To Kill a Mockingbird. Every year. Wow. And I recognize now that book is considered problematic for a couple of reasons. But for me, as a white child growing up, it was powerful and it taught me lessons. And I felt like every time I reread it, I got a different lesson. Like one was look at something from another's perspective, like walk a mile in their shoes. You know, another was do the right thing, even when it's hard.
Right.
You know, and so there's that. I find that I do not reread very much these days because there are so many good books out there being written every day that I tend to go to the new, not the old pile.
Right.
But I reread Harry Potter every once in a while. If I like,
those are
just for fun. Yeah.
They're fun. And it is comforting. It's comforting to escape that magical world. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So what are you reading now?
I just finished a debut novel. I'm going to actually have it here on my desk, Olympus, Texas. And it's a debut novel by this woman, Stacey Swan. It's about a dysfunctional Texas family living on a ranch in Houston, Texas. I'm old enough to remember Dallas. So I sort of was like, this could be Dallas.
Is it as dramatical as Dallas was?
Well, the conceit of it is, and I was worried that the conceit would bury the book, but it didn't. She pulled it off, is that each of the characters in this family is based on one of the Greek gods.
Oh, cool.
And so it's really fun to sort of think about that. And so like one of the sons is March and he's based on Mars. He has a problem with his temper. The son Hap is good with ironworking and is married to like the most beautiful blonde woman ever made. And so that's obviously Hephaestus and Venus. And so that's good. And then I always have 2 or 3 other books. Like I usually have a couple nonfiction and I'm trying to decide what to read next. And speaking of Carrie, I think the winner is Sharks in the Time of Saviors, which is a book set in Hawaii that she recommended to me.
I just heard about this book actually from a different podcast. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa, you are amazing as always. And I'm so grateful that you're able to spend some time with me here on Spark. And I know that people will be able to learn about the books that you mentioned on Book Jam. bookjamvermont.com. And also check out whatever upcoming events that you've got, hopefully coming soon, right? With once COVID is sort of...
We're hoping. I mean, 3 Questions should start up again as soon as the Norwich Bookstore starts to have authors again. They kind of... That went online and the 3 Questions format didn't seem as important. I don't know. It was just one more thing. But yeah, we're hoping to do live pages in the pub soon. We might have to do it outdoors in the fall instead of indoors in December. That hasn't happened. I don't know. So yeah, books are always exciting. It's always exciting to read. And I would put a plug in for Everybody Wins as well. If people are looking for a manageable volunteer opportunity that is truly meaningful, it really can't be beat. You are matched one-on-one with a kid. You meet them once a week during lunch. You are not allowed to have any contact with them outside of that 1 hour. So you can really, if you are a person who's very busy, it really can be just an hour of your time every week. And so, yeah. And it's just fun. It's just fun to see kids excited about reading.
And thank you for that. I mean, thank you for promoting. I started reading very early, and it is the greatest gift that was ever given to me. My brother actually saying to me, "You're old enough to read this book on your own." And me going, "Oh, okay." When I was 4, you know, and it is the gift that keeps on giving, is that gift of reading and stepping into another world, like you said, another human. So thank you for joining us. I'm so grateful.
Thank you, Amanda. You're amazing, and have fun.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. And you have been watching Spark, the Upper Valley's arts and culture program here on CATV. Of course, you can learn more about our guests by going to the YouTube channel and checking out their websites down in the description. And you can subscribe for Sparks, for CATV's YouTube channel there. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you next time.